Good morning. All right, time for a reading. I'm going to go with The Great Adventure by Emmet Fox. My hubby and I are about to go on a great adventure. We got married a year and a half ago, but our honeymoon is in a couple of weeks. We're leaving in a week and a half. We're going to go to Fort Myers, see my parents, have a little wedding reception, introduce them to some friends and family, bring you along, maybe. And then go on a 10-day Caribbean cruise, and it happens to be with Abraham Hicks too. So we're going to get a big jolt of high-level vibration and knowledge about the law of attraction. It's been a serious adventure the last year and a half with my hubby to start a new life together. Also to take on really starting to live the law of attraction and shift foundational beliefs and processes in life to line up with that to get some of those results. So anyway, Emmet Fox, The Great Adventure. Here we go. Many people seem to have the impression that the sole object of metaphysical study is the overcoming of difficulties. But to suppose that is to lose all sense of proportion. The truth is to be sought for its own sake. It's not perfect, simple wisdom. It brings me back to the recent insight I had that the only thing we take with us when we go is our learning or knowledge of what we experienced here. If we took a step back, we would realize that that means that's all we're here for. In a perfect universe with a perfect loving God who created us to be like a perfect flowing process with this beautiful world and its vibrational spiritual counterpart, it only makes sense that we would design a sort of playground or game or place where we would come to gain what we're looking for, which means the exploration of our personal preferences and the expansion, the growth, the learning, the experience, because words don't teach, only life experience teaches. So until we live it ourselves, we don't really know it. That we would be in an environment that's what we're coming for, is just the learning, because that is going with us. We don't need any of the other stuff. Isn't that fascinating? So that means that it's the truth, it's the knowledge that's the most valuable piece. That's what we're here for. It's a currency. So the truth is to be sought for its own sake. The knowledge of truth is its own reward, and that reward is health, harmony, and prosperity. Much better put than me. To begin with, but this is only the beginning. The real object of the seeker should be the development of his own higher faculties and powers. In a word, his spiritual evolution. This should matter. And when we change the lens of spiritual evolution to emotional health and prosperity, because when we realize that emotion is a spiritual communication device, it becomes clear that our spiritual evolution is connected to our emotional well-being, or our emotional state or mood is a reflection of our spiritual condition at all times, because it's constantly vibrating and letting us know if you're moving towards what you want or what you don't want. Putting it through that lens, that means I can always have a pulse on where I'm at spiritually, because you don't get somewhere and arrive there. And that's really hard for us to understand. It's always a moving towards or away. And you can be really spiritually aligned one day and really not the next. So it's a bit of a roller coaster, especially as we learn that our emotions are a guidepost for where we're at with this, which has been a really new muscle for me to flex. Now it so happens that as fast as one acquires spiritual understanding, his circumstances improve in every respect. His health, his temper, his happiness, and his material surroundings rapidly and automatically change for the better. One way you can see that where it's a bit pronounced is if you're ever around folks in AA or NA, when they really start to straighten out their lives and change how they're living, and you start in this really tough place and then very quickly evolve into somewhere with a much bigger contrast to where you were. And so it's just such such a stark contrast in that world that you can see when someone changes how they're living, how it impacts what they invite in very quickly. Per contra, a want of true understanding, so in other words, not having any truth or understanding, automatically and necessarily expresses itself in some sort of difficulty on the physical plane, culminating in sin, sickness, and death. And sin is a lack of love. When people find themselves in any difficulty, should they have some glimmerings of spiritual truth, they realize, however dimly, that a way out is to be found along the path of spiritual enlightenment, and consequently, they study books, consult friends in the movement, ask for treatment or guidance, or take whatever step appears to be appropriate at the moment. This is the natural and proper course to pursue, and provided they understand what it is they are doing, it is only a matter of time before their difficulties, their ill health, their poverty, their trouble, whatever it is, must disappear. They are, in fact, seeking spiritual enlightenment. They are working for a change in consciousness. And one cannot seek for an improved consciousness without getting it, nor get it without making a demonstration. Everything is connected. So in other words, the more I believe, it starts with an asking, the more I want to be something more, or get out of the situation. So let's take poverty. The more I want to get out of it, the more I'm focusing on the desire to have money, I think it's always being asked for, so then it's always being answered and being given. And so as someone sort of focuses on that, at the same time, they also start to shift their belief about what they're worth. No, I want more than this. No, I want to make more than this. I'm worth more than this. But there's a way of going about it in a victim-y way that holds us away from what we want. And then there's a way of coming at it that's just deserving and worthy in energy. And that's the shift that happens over time. And we manage differently. We have control over that. Do we respond in a positive way to the challenge, or do we get bitter and negative and sort of off track? But we can use those experiences to move the needle to believe we're worth more and then more and more good comes in because we've asked for it, so it's sitting there. So it's all about knowing that that's what I'm worth. And so as I focus on that desire for that change and believe that there's something out there that I can trust to bring it to me, whatever that is, I allow it in and it happens for me. And like he says, different thriving happens. And as you change your vibration because you're feeling happier, excited, more relieved, more worthy and more deserving, those things come in, and that's your demonstration because all those things go together. Misunderstanding and disappointment arise when people mistake the teaching for some kind of elaborate conjuring trick. When a man supposes that by a wave of the hand or the repetition of an incantation, his circumstances can be changed for the better, without any corresponding change in his own mentality, he is doomed to disappointment. You have to change how you think. He has not come into truth, and the truth movement has nothing for him. During the past few years, a large number of people of all sorts have consulted me about their difficulties, and they easily divide themselves into two groups. Some people, for instance, are in trouble owing to some very obvious defect in character, but are quite unwilling to overcome this defect, or even, in many cases, to acknowledge it. They wish to continue in their mistake and to have prosperity or happiness as well. Needless to say, for them, there is no relief until they have suffered a little more and have been punished sufficiently to make them do what is necessary. The man who drinks, for example, is certain to ruin his business, and you cannot help him as long as he prefers whiskey to prosperity. Of course, if he is trying to give up whiskey, you can help him to do so, and then all will be well. But otherwise, he will just have to go on suffering until his lesson is learned. Other people complain that they have no friends, cannot keep servants, and that they live unhappy, isolated lives. I can't say I've ever complained that I can't keep servants, but I'm open to it. This is from the 30s, by the way. And that they live unhappy, isolated lives, and a few minutes conversation with them makes it obvious that there is an atrociously bad temper there, which has driven everyone away. So in other words, the person who's complaining about the isolated, unhappy life, they've driven everyone away from them. If such people are prepared to work to change themselves, the road is clear. But until they are, there is very little to be done for them. Most of you who read this, however, will be seeking the truth in the right way. And to seek the truth in that spirit is really to have come into the truth. I think that's one of the strangest things about the spiritual journey, is that there's no destination. You're just continuing to move along the path. And I like this, you're coming into truth. And being on the path to it is really part of being in it. It's not really a place, it's part of the journey. You would not have sought me had you already found me, as a quote it has. That being so, you should not allow yourself to be worried or depressed merely because the demonstration is delayed. If you have sufficient understanding to believe in treatment, you have sufficient understanding to know that it must only be a matter of time before you're out of the woods. And the treatment is the golden key, which I had in another video, which is really just praying, giving the situation over to God. You don't have to, it says even believe in God, but, and then just think about positive qualities about God is love, I'm a child of God, instead of the problem, and continue to do that. That's treatment. So the funny thing about that I don't think Emmet Fox, or maybe he did realize he was accessing, was you're getting your mind off the topic, and your mind is the issue. So if you're worried or scared, the more you think about a topic in fear, the more you attract what you don't want in the situation. So the best thing to do is think about something else that generates trust. And when we're talking about an all-loving God, even if we don't entirely believe in it, it generates a feeling of trust and home and stability, security. So it's a vibrational and mental treatment. But it is only a matter of time before you're out of the woods. And what does it really matter whether it is a little sooner or a little later? Any delay in getting results can only be due to one of two things. Either the mental cause of your difficulty is very deeply seated in your consciousness and is requiring a good deal of work, or else you are not yet working in the best way. And if this is so, again, it will be only a matter of time before you find what is the best way for you. In other words, once you're on the path, there is no hurry. Oh, but, says someone, in my case, there is the most urgent hurry, because unless I make my demonstration by Saturday, the verdict of the court will be given against me. Or, my creditors will foreclose, or I shall lose the boat, or whatnot. But the answer in truth is still, there is no hurry. It's funny, he teaches out of the Bible, but that makes me think of Taoism, where it says with nature, everything is accomplished. Nothing is hurried or nothing is rushed, but everything is accomplished. And there is no hurry for the creative force. For the gates of hell shall never prevail. Let evil do its worst on Saturday. Let the court give its verdict. Let the creditors strike their blow. Let the boat sail. When Monday comes, prayer will still put everything right. If you can get your realization, and if not on Monday, then Wednesday or Friday or the week after next. Time does not really matter, for prayer is creative and will build the new Jerusalem for you anywhere at any time, irrespective of what may have happened. Just as soon as you can get your realization of truth, omnipresent good, Emmanuel, which is God with you. Isn't that interesting? Prayer is creative. So prayer is really a focused ask. And he was aware that was a creative process, right? That's what Abraham Hicks says, ask and it is given. So as soon as you ask with a prayer, it creates because it's given, and then it's for you to let it in. And a big piece of this has to do with faith. Faith that everything's going to work out. Faith that everything's okay. I didn't realize that feeling down about my life was doubt. And over the last few months, I've realized, I've come to terms with a lot of doubt in my life. And then I was doing doubt and not realizing it was doubt, and where I get to increase my faith and good and that everything's going to work out and not worry about it so much. That's what a lot of, right, this message is. This is the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven like a bride adorned for her husband. Haha, going on my honeymoon 2 weeks. Get to be a little bride again. Like a bride adorned for her husband, and is independent of any conditions of the physical plane. Independent of any conditions of the physical plane. I mean, it sounds so much like Neville, right? It's just saying like you're creating an idea and it comes down and it's independent of any of the conditions of the physical plane. It has to be because it's in response to your asking. And so it kind of has to like download into the physical reality from the vibrational. You just have to relax and let it in. When you are in difficulties, look upon the overcoming of them as a great adventure. And I think it's important to add here, because of the nature of these laws, it's important to realize there are certain aspects in the story of Jesus where you can see this happening, like when he's sitting even in the prison room with Pilate, and Pilate's like, I don't see any reason to hurt you or do anything. I have no idea even why you're arrested. And Jesus is just sitting there quietly, never defends himself. It's important to apply here and realize that Jesus wasn't just crucified and punished. He wanted that outcome, or it wouldn't have happened. It was something he was asking for, and that's the reason we should poke around a little more and realize that he wasn't a hapless, poor victim. If he wanted to do it, then it's not a tragedy, right? And he wasn't attacked and persecuted. He was guiding a process for something symbolic or powerful or important. It's an interesting way sort of layer on, like it was planned. And it's interesting because in Christianity they believe Jesus's death was planned, but at the same time find it to be like this horrible tragedy that's what would you say, just like, I mean, I guess that sums it up, right? Like a horrible tragedy, or he was persecuted. But if it's a plan and something that was asked for, then it's not persecution, it's powerful creation. There's an incongruency, plurality, I guess you would say there. So when you are in difficulties, look upon the overcoming of them as a great adventure. It's a perfect segue. Jesus had a great adventure at hand, right? It was a great adventure just to prove that death wasn't real, which he was trying to prove, I think, was the physical reality isn't real, or it's not the most powerful thing. Your spiritual self is the most powerful thing and cannot be killed. It's a pretty great adventure. It's a pretty cool thing to prove. Resist the temptation to be tragic, to give way to self-pity or discouragement. See, I didn't see those as doubting, and I was falling into some of that over the last months. And approach the problems as though you were an explorer seeking a path through darkest Africa, or an Edison working to overcome difficulties in connection with a new invention. You are your invention. You know that there is a way out of any difficulty whatever, no matter what it may be, through the changing of your own consciousness by prayer. You know that by thus raising your consciousness, any conceivable form of good that you can desire will be yours. And you know that nobody else can by any means hinder you from doing this when you really want to do it. Relatives, customers, employees, the government, bad times, so-called nothing can hinder you from the rebuilding of your own consciousness. And this rebuilding is the great adventure. You know that there is a way out of any difficulty whatever, no matter what it may be, through the changing of your own consciousness by prayer. You know that by thus raising your consciousness, so he's talking about raising your vibration. That's exactly what Abraham talks about. Raising the rate at which you vibrate, which has to do with being happier, feeling worthy, deserving, stable, secure. Then it will be yours. Like it says, no matter what it may be. No matter what you desire, it will be yours. So I think that's great. And a lot of what I've been experiencing over the last months is how I've been stumbling. I've been looking at, doubt and um, loss and grief and a little bit of tragedy and self-pity and futility. And I'm very grateful now to have had this time to look at this. It's a little bit daunting at first, but that it's our job to change our own consciousness, and that the power to do so sits with each individual. And that really is the great adventure. And that's the point of being here, to get that learning and expansion, right? That's really what it is, to raise your consciousness, is the spiritual path and the thing that you can take with you. And certainly when we learn from Abraham, as we're going through this, we're creating that experience for the other side, for vibration, for the vortex. It's about bringing it into this life that we're also studying a little bit more. So perfect paving of the way to our cruise in a couple weeks with Abraham. And again, continuing to focus on, while it feels weird, I have a hard time with the only point of this reality being a game and just for learning and fun. It feels like there should be something more dire on the line, but it's what I guess come to terms with, because isn't that really more of what God would create, a loving God would create for training for its offspring, or whatever, or its counterpart, whatever you want to call us. But it's lightening the load a lot. And you do have to have some skin in the game to make things feel like they matter. And this does matter, but it's continuing to shift towards that positive, continuing to see things in a light and trust, have faith. And anytime you're talking about trust and faith and satisfaction, it's a higher vibrational level. And the more you vibe there, right, the more good things come in. So it's a fascinating relationship of what we think, what we feel, where our place is in this world, how we interpret the spiritual truths that come through. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you today. Have a blessed day.